I have to make some comments about this video. It's very, very interesting to me, and I want to spend some time with it, actually. And I'm going to leave that up to you as the viewer as to how long you want to spend with this. But I'm doing this to make a point. Initially is just to give you an idea, primarily, of the viewer comments and responding to this conversation that Bernie had with Joe Rogan Experience, episode number 1330. And they talk about Medicare for all, and they talk about basically the Green New Deal. They talk about the debate process, the electoral process, a variety of different topics. Bernie gets to go into detail in the over 1 hour conversation. There's almost 10 million views here as of September the 20th, where I'm recording this. And there are 178,295 comments. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get into thousands of comments, maybe, eventually, because this is an important video that clearly shows that many people are having an awakening and are admitting that they're finally spending some time to get more details about Bernie Sanders and what he stands for, the issues that he focuses on, his career as a politician, and just in general, even his personality, which is not, a soundbite at the debate stage or on the mainstream media news, or even if they see any clips from any of his speeches where he has to shout because, well, you're in an open space area where there's a lot of people, so you kind of have to have a loud speaking voice. Here he's just kind of being himself in a quiet environment with Joe. And I'm going to spend time even more on what people are having to say about watching this experience. I am from Germany, and we have free healthcare and free college. We are not broke. Free healthcare and education are essential for a just society. I always saw the problem with America being that most Americans never leave their American bubble. If I would live in America, it would be cheaper for me to fly from New York to Berlin every weekend and study in Germany than simply studying in the U.S. That's just dumb. The quality of education is just as good in Germany as it is in America. Wake up, Americans. Props to Joe for having Bernie on and giving him an opportunity to make his case. I have been incredibly encouraged by this comment section, which is filled with people who previously thought Bernie was some kind of radical communist, but now see that they've been systemically lied to. Bernie's policies are only radical insofar as they would mean a fundamental change for the betterment of everyone who has to work for a living. It turns out when you give him a chance to explain his vision without trying to trip him up with gotcha questions, he makes a lot of sense to most people. Spot on. As a Republican, I can tell you this interview made me see Bernie in a whole new way. His ideas are pretty good, and he has them for a while. Not a flip-flop guy like others. Good alternative for what we have right now. I wish Republicans had a better choice. Screw the debates. Let Joe interview each candidate for an hour. This is where I'm congratulating Bernie Sanders. Way more constructive than CNN or Fox. Hello, America. You watching, listening. Bernie just gave the 101 on political economic dysfunction. Now go check out Bernie saying the same thing on C-SPAN as far back as the 80s. A true humanitarian and should be treated as an American treasure. Now for the 101 on the human condition, check out Dr. West on the JRE show. Bernie and Dr. West have been the best two guests of the year by far. Thanks again for giving both a platform and time they deserve to discuss deeply complicated issues. Fantastic. I love how Joe gave Bernie the same time to answer real questions, and all the corporate media can center on is the alien question. Bernie talks straight because he can. He doesn't take money from rich people, so he does not have to talk in codes like most politicians have to in order to please their donors while pretending to care for people. How stupid do Americans have to be to not want their healthcare system being fixed? Do they enjoy dying? Everyone should share this on at least one social media platform. The butterfly effect is real. You don't know who you can reach by sharing this, and it would greatly benefit and further his campaign, possibly to the point of winning this. In Australia, we have a minimum wage and award wages minimum set hourly rate per industry. Seems to work, and if you want to get around this, you need to pay them as a contractor. They need to agree to invoice as a contractor, and there are other benefits to being a contractor. Example, tax deductions for running a business. It's not perfect, but it works. Bernie Sanders has a great vision for America. Firstly, huge respect to Joe Rogan for having Bernie as a guest. Secondly, I thought that Bernie presented his arguments immensely clearly and in a way which is truly presidential. I genuinely hope that he becomes president, as I think he can be a leader not only to the U.S. but an example to the world. If you can bail out Wall Street, you can bail out student debt. It's about damn time someone said it. It's so nice to see a politician saying, this is a complex issue, but I won't be dealing with it alone. The golden rule is that if you have the gold, you make the rules. Wow, Bernie has a really relaxing voice when he's chilling. I can agree with Joe that we should pay miners less, but not dramatically less. If the minimum wage becomes $15 an hour, give miners $10 cash plus $5 into a college fund, or $3.50 into a savings bond. Finally, something worth a damn, making top trending. Congratulations, Joe. Keep it up. Reading some of the anti-Bernie comments makes me question whether Americans only care about money, greed, and profits. It's always about the money, and Americans need to empathize with their people more. Joe Rogan giving one of the best interviews I've seen. Bernie comes across as a genuinely plausible candidate. I'd love to see him as president, but part of the problem is that those billionaires he spoke about ain't gonna like it. As a conservative, I'm super pissed that Bernie doesn't get fair airtime. My opinion of you and him has completely changed after this interview. Best of luck, Bern. This interview shined a clearer light on Bernie. Didn't the head of the DNC say that he wouldn't allow Bernie to get the nomination because he's not a registered Democrat? How can you disagree with the solutions Bernie Sanders brings up or even hate this guy? The world would be a better place with President Sanders. I am European, by the way. Joe Rogan kills it again. Better interview skills than all the major news networks employees combined. I love Bernie. I see a video with Bernie and I click. He's a very sane person and hardly a radical. He's in fact middle of the road for everyone else in the world. It's funny how in Europe most of Bernie's ideas sound normal. It's funny and shocking at the same time to see USA having these basic problems, which are the most first world countries like all the Western Europe. Something decided and implemented a long time ago. Joe truly respects Bernie. You might well look back in 1,000 years and say this episode saved the planet. Thank you, Joe, for this. I've always associated myself with being a conservative. With that said, I have never in my life witnessed a political interview or discussion that compares to this. This is at a new level. Though I don't agree on everything that Senator Sanders said here, I have to admit that he offers an overall compelling case for how to make truly make America great. Kudos to you, Joe Rogan, for taking the time to get involved and host a truly historical interview. This was truly amazing. I wish that every candidate running would appear on your podcast so we the people could get a true look at the person and hear how they would run things instead of hearing the next news cycle's soundbite. He's got my vote. Bernie should have been president. Bernie got my vote. I've literally just been reading the comments every day since this video was posted because it fills my heart with joy. It's not capitalism, it's corporatism. Get this man in office. This is a better way than the debates. I've been saying Bernie should have won last election, but nobody wanted to listen. Lumbee family in North Carolina, we support Bernie. Worked at Amazon, CLT2, unpacking and sorting boxes from China packed with newspaper covered in human feces. We were not allowed to go home and clean or change. Peak season, I got a viral infection that caused sudden onset deafness. Coworker got MSRA. Then bullied by coworkers due to hearing loss. Amazon did nothing, left shortly after a worker was stabbed at this facility. Oh my gosh. I stand beside him in a lot of his views. If he can pull it off, I'd like to see what change he could bring. Hopefully he would follow through. Bernie is basically has the views of any logical person. Wow, Bernie compartmentalizes everything so clearly and with intense clarity, regardless of whether you agree with his diagnoses or solutions. There is no doubt his intelligence. I'm with Bernie. Make him burn while I burn this blunt. Okay. Whether you are left or right, can We agree that we must all come together and make this world a better place for our children. The elites do not care about our future. They see us as peasants that are in the way of their money and power. Bernie is our last sincere hope to fully curb a world burning. I just stole this great quote, I guess it's a quote from Twitter. Wonderful line near the end of Chernobyl miniseries. Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later that debt is paid. Who works for climate change and the lies of oil companies, we will pay the debt. And if anybody wants to try and make fun of Bernie by saying that minimum wage is different in every state to try and discredit him, he was referring to the federal minimum wage, which states can go above but can't go below, and that's what he wants to change. He actually seems to think about and care about the average American instead of just thinking about money and greed and more profit for the already rich. I wonder, there is so much hate on Bernie Sanders everywhere you look. He plans on fighting corruption and injustice so naturally that billionaires are lobbying everywhere, including social media. Good point. Good job on the interview, Joe. You covered the important questions that the public really wants to know. Bernie is so common sense. I may not agree with Bernie on everything, but I wouldn't say he's radical. As European things Bernie wants to do should be self-evident. It looks like he is talking about a third world country. That was a good episode. I repeatedly come back here just to read the comment section and see how many more views this video has. Laughing out loud. It's a sad testament of our time that a man who wants simply to help people is described as extremist and far left. If anyone gets together and votes for Bernie, then the country will be transformed for the better. That's why everyone should share his life-changing manifesto to as many people as possible. Oh my God, Bernie just nailed my issue. Big Pharma almost destroyed me, but they didn't get me, and I'm fighting mad about it. I'm yours forever. I'm elderly. That's a win. Thanks to Bernie for standing up for our middle-class family values. Joe has really impressed me by allowing a fair shake of the facts. Joe should host his own climate debate and let the candidates actually get their message to the people. 9.4 million human hours well spent. Well done, Joe and Bernie. The only negative thing about the podcast is that it should have been 3 hours, not 1. This is great. Thank you for giving Bernie this platform. Smiley face. Great chat. I have a different perspective of Bernie now and don't seem to be as radical as people are saying. Just some important issues that need to be addressed. To help spread this interview, every American should see this. I'm glad so many people viewed this one. Bernie's my guy. Let's all get out there and vote. Yeah, he could be reclining on a beach watching seagulls, yet he's up and out every day fighting for the 99%, just as he has been since he was a young man, fighting for segregated housing for fellow students. Bernie literally helped lead the first known sit-in at the University of Chicago, where 33 students camped outside of the president's office, protesting segregating housing on campus. Why is it no one ever talks about the massive link of agriculture against our planet and climate change? The cause of drug addiction is lack of hope, and lack of hope is lack of opportunity and education and a lack of community. In the old days, everyone was famous in their community. Now people who aren't internationally famous think they are nothing. Be someone in your community and make that important. Wow, I can't believe it. I want to vote for him. This is an amazing interview and an excellent disquisition on Bernie Sanders' positions on vital topics. Yeah, I'm a Bernie fan now. Thanks, Joe, for having this program. Seems that for any truly civilized country in terms of self-preservation, that education would be the pinnacle of its society. However, here in the great USA, it is almost upside down. More money being spent on prisons and military industries. What happens when the jobs become more advanced than the aptitudes of the advanced human beings? Why doesn't Joe Rogan host the DNC debates? Most of the Rogan audience is conservative or right-wing, so it's good to hear the left for a change. As a conservative, he raises a lot of valid points that I agree with. WTF is going on in mainstream media? I thought this guy was a lunatic. The country needs Bernie. Bernie got my vote. Well, I owe my friend an apology. I trashed Bernie constantly because I thought he was radical, thanks to fake news. My friend tried telling me many times over to just hear him out, but I was defensive. This isn't radical, and I'm ashamed and almost feel like I've been taken advantage of. Get this man elected. Oh my gosh, she's just now saying what I just said. If he doesn't get the Democratic ticket, I'm writing him in on the general election day, and communities need to make more communities great. Detroit turned their downtown into an urban gardens, and all the whites who left came back to buy their vegetables. The people did that. If only the mainstream media used the same interview format that Joe Rogan uses here, our political discourse would be far more rational than it currently is. In a media landscape that is littered with superficial soundbites where candidates and pundits are compelled and incentivized to caricature and straw man the opposition, no true deliberation of the issues can take place. All that comes out of such a media circus is obfuscation and polarization, where personalities and camps eclipse the issues and the facts. My only complaint about this interview is that I wish it were longer and that everyone would see this as opposed to the debates and shallow interviews that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News conducts. I am now a Bernie supporter. Used to not agree with Bernie's policies, but hearing him actually explain them warmed me up to them. Deplatformed tards are fuming. Bernie Sanders' economy with actual social conservatism. And just so we are clear, the U.S. taxpayers funds 30% of the research drug companies due to develop drugs that they then patent and charge a fortune for. The wealthy corporations in America have really screwed things up. Greed and more greed. After watching this interview, my vote goes to Bernie. Give the guy a fair shot at being president. You know, I don't agree 100% with Bernie. However, he's not nearly the monster some conservatives make him out to be. Definitely like his ideas on those crooked drug and insurance companies. Great job, Joe. It takes a comedian and artist to expose the truth about Bernie and the fact that the mainstream corrupt media is out to get him, and he wants fairness and they want to continue to buy Congress. Once Bernie starts talking, he makes sense, and he's basically too cool for school. I had no interest in Bernie until I listened to this. Every American should listen to this interview. Almost at 10 million views. Keep sharing the video with your networks. If a candidate wasn't willing to go on JR and have a real discussion, I wouldn't vote for them. Great interview. I don't agree with Bernie about a few things, but this conversation needs to be had and re-had in a very deliberate fashion. The DNC hates Bernie. We should make our own party. Joe, thank you for having Bernie Sanders on your podcast, because honestly, listening to corporate media hacks makes my skin crawl. Question to everyone: what did you like about Bernie and what do you dislike about Trump? I do not live in USA. I live in Armenia, and I really like Bernie Sanders. He is honest. He wants to help people. Wake up, America. You don't need Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders for president. Joe, it is legal because they make the laws. I love when Bernie gets fired up. I don't agree with Bernie's views on gun control and minimum wage entirely, but I will say I have gained more respect for him if all he says is true. The country's main problem, in my opinion, is the rich and the media ruling over everything, which reiterates Bernie's thoughts. I think every candidate should do an interview with Joe Rogan. I've seen Andrew Yang's, both of Tulsi Gabbard's, and now Bernie's, and I've really enjoyed them all. I don't want to say what I liked most about each candidate because I really don't want to get into an opinion battle, but I will suggest everyone listens to all of them. You got Bernie. Joe is the man. Joe Rogan for president. Joe Rogan, this may be your finest moment. Thank you so much for a great interview with a great guest. We deserve dignity. I came here as a Bernie supporter and not necessarily a Joe Rogan fan, but I came away from this really impressed with Rogan. This was a damn good interview. If anyone wins the nomination of the Democratic Party other than Bernie Sanders, Trump will win again. I hope to see Bernie Sanders get elected as the President of the United States. He deserves it more than anyone. Bernie, I wrote the damn bill. Sanders. What I love about Bernie is that he makes it clear we have common problems that don't care about party affiliation. I like Bernie more now because I understand his intentions are good. However, his approach to fix these issues seems deeply flawed. He at least classifies himself as a socialist. If any Bernie supporter would like to discuss why his plans would or wouldn't work, I'd be happy to change you or my mind. To change your or my mind. Oh, that's open-minded. Wow, I think Bernie just set a record on the most amount of YouTube comments, if there's such a thing. Coming from a Vermonter, Bernie has done a great job. However, I still am watching other candidates. It's most important to do a ton of research when looking at candidates. Ignore all news. The news is pure one-sided on the left or right. Let's face it, in reality, if most logical talk, we all have right and left views. Great job, Joe. Better than all of mainstream media. You two should have a debate. Joe Rogan can take care of it. He can ask better questions. This was the fastest hour I've ever experienced. Was hooked the entire time. Great that he gets this kind of exposure and time to explain his policy. Thank you, Joe, for giving us a chance to really hear this guy. Mainstream media represents him in such obvious bias it is irritating. Really good interview. Honestly, and a politician is so rare. He really cares for people. Good job, Joe. I used to hate on Bernie without knowing anything about him or his ideology. However, now that I am actually listening to what he says, he makes sense in a lot of topics. He seems like he truly wants the best for the people, not just to be in office. This video made go out and sign up for Bernie. Bernie, you got my vote. Thanks, Joe. Can you do this with all the candidates? Make sure you are registered to vote and find out if you need to be registered as a Democrat in order to vote for Bernie Sanders. Some states have closed primaries, so you need to make sure you are registered correctly. Spread the word. This is very important. Not a fan of Bernie, but it's cool he came on. Nice work, Joe. Now, is that legal because they make the laws? Screw the debates. You learn way more about the candidates from Joe Rogan's podcast. It's a shame this is no longer than an hour. Hopefully he brings on a few more candidates. Ban the ammunition sale of said assault weapons and the amount of ammunition you can buy at all. Gun ranges can provide ammunition for recreational shooters that cannot be taken out of the range. Making money in the United States is easy. It's making money for yourself that is difficult. Interesting. As someone who is more recently getting involved and interested in politics, it seems odd to me that there are people like Bernie Sanders who are clearly trying to make our society better, and yet Donald Trump is in the White House tweeting like a child, outsourcing his own companies to countries with no labor laws and just saying and doing ridiculous things. Man, Bernie's voice is so soothing and relaxing. From Mississippi here, it may not count for much, but you have my vote, Bernie. You are the president this country needs. Bernie, I don't have a magical solution. Joe, have you ever done? Stand for the people nowadays. It's called being radical. Out of all the things to end with, he ends with aliens. Currently in a doctorate program, I have had many years dealing with student loans, and this is my understanding. The school can charge as much as they want because more places require degrees, even if the job doesn't really need one. So the school raises the price knowing demand is high, and they don't lose a dime because the government pays the school and the student pays the government the $7 interest rate. So why would they change the system when they have all the people trying to better understand themselves caged already? I can tell you that the private sector made it even worse. That's really what caused the student loan crisis to blow up. I hope you guys can manage to get this guy to be president. America deserves a proper leader. How do you post a question? I voted for Trump last election. I think Bernie sounds like a much smarter choice next election. It's been nothing but drama and chaos the entire 4 years. I'm curious to know how Bernie plans to raise everyone's incomes dramatically, guarantee everyone free quality healthcare and dental care without the cost of everything else rising to offset the higher income. If he can really do this, everyone should be voting for Bernie. It's crazy how many comments are people admitting they had Bernie Sanders all wrong. This man is nearly 80 years old and still wakes up every day genuinely trying to help people who think he's a nutcase. I would have given up a long time ago. Major respect to you, Mr. Sanders. Before watching, Bernie is a communist and will lead America towards destruction. After watching, though I'm a conservative, I like this man. Nearly 10 million views. Hot damn. Go Bernie. I do like his idea of allowing candidates airtime on TV before elections to address their constituents. Latinos for Bernie Sanders. So unfortunate this podcast is short. This guy can make Americans great again. I am not American or 18, but I would vote for him. Great interview. 5 years of uni in Croatia costs around 20k euros. That's basically medical school, a very high degree, and a medical school better than what you can find in the U.S. I know that for a fact as my cousin switched from U.S. uni to Croatian uni and university. Said repeating the first year in Croatia, he learned a lot more than in the U.S. and it's very cheap compared to U.S. Yep. Bernie should seriously consider doing an ASMR channel. More wholesome comment section on YouTube. Here's an idea for gun control. Stop treating the shooters like celebrities. Stop putting their names and faces all over CNN and Fox. If they didn't get any publicity, I bet a whole lot less mass shooting would go on. Just an idea. I understand that Bernie is a busy man, but can we all agree that 1 hour was clearly not enough for this podcast? Joe Rogan, you sir are a true Renaissance man, such thoughtful discussions. Bernie Sanders versus the greedy establishments, 2020. This could be the main event of our lifetime. He won my vote today. This is the best work of Joe until now. From a guy representing Fear Factor, he went this class act of an interview. He didn't go for the views. He actually analyzed the issues. Much respect. It is so sad to think children have to practice active shooter drills in America. Completely absurd. This is reality today. If you told someone in Canada or Europe that, it would seem bizarre. Commie? ? Sounds like common sense to me. I'm a spiritual anarchist. Bernie with Tulsi as VP would be absolutely unstoppable. I wonder if they thought about anything like that. Otherwise, I fear that Tulsi is going to act as a spoiler for Bernie. Not a phony bone in the dude's body. I love Joey. I was settled in listening to the interview like I would any news outlet, thinking, wow, Joe's gotten pro with this stuff. Wake up, people. Vote for this man. Even if you don't like him, he makes factual points that we accept as normal life. Bernie talks about climate change being a national crisis. Boom, weeks later, the Amazonia is burning to the ground. Coincidence? I think not. It's time to transform our economy. Bernie Sanders is the man that can get millions of people to stand up against the American oligarchy. Thank you, Joe, for feeling the burn. Almost 10 million views. I'm from Italy. We have the second best healthcare in the world, and for the life of me, I have no idea why Americans are not voting for this guy. Bernie cares about people. He's fought the establishment for decades without the spotlight because it was the right thing to do. When I was in Iraq, they called Iraqi news propaganda. They called other countries' news propaganda. Yet we'll sit here and believe our news, when it really is propaganda for what they want you to believe. Nice, honest guy, and the ideas make sense to me. Don't get all the animosity. Actually seems like actually cares about working people as opposed to just about everybody else. Texas feels the burn. Nothing like an honest candidate who has never wavered. Sanders is the independence of freedom choice. This is the leader of the third party, the Progressive Party. Time to unite for the people. Best move you've made, Joe. Bernie is like Corbyn over here in the UK, but better. Any Bernie supporters, please volunteer for his campaign. The DNC Democratic elite will do everything they can to squash him, and they are powerful. They could beat him unless everyone who supports him jumps in to help him win. Always awesome perspective. Go Bernie. The world needs a man like this. New rule for any presidential candidate: you must attend the Joe Rogan Experience and tell us about yourself. Best interview and amazing questions. Asked by Joe. Bernie is not a radical socialist. He is just trying to help America keep up with the rest of the developed world and do the same policies that have been established in Europe, Canada, and parts of Asia for decades. Both parties make him out to be this crazy man just because it's going to affect how deep industries can get funds in their pockets. The DNC thinks they're taking a risk with Bernie because they keep trying to appeal to moderates. What they should be doing is appealing to people who are actually on the left, not regressives, but actual liberals, and give Bernie the nomination. I can almost guarantee Bernie would defeat Trump if given the chance. Going on podcasts like this instead of following the well-trodden path, Hillary didn't even do the latter perfectly because she skipped states. Works wonders for candidates. Amazon pays payroll taxes. Look it up. You start going after them, then there will be even more companies leaving this country and there will be less jobs. And as far as minimum wage goes, he said the burden would be equal on all companies. If that's true, it will hurt small businesses even more. Plus, they would just then cut hours or replace people with machines that are cheaper, and then once again you would have more unemployment. Well, that depends. That's not necessarily true. Again, it's a judgment. That's an opinion. Damn it, Rogan, he's telling me the truth. Now I gotta change my whole mind. Forbes just came up with a list of which candidates were giving donations from billionaires. Bernie's the only one with 0 billionaires supporting him, yet he has gotten the most individual donation from working families by miles. Name another country in the world that's debating over whether or not they should have a U.S.-style healthcare system. Great point. Huge step forward in the future of political discourse. Make our politicians openly communicate with voices we trust. Thank you, Joe Rogan. America needs to start protesting. I don't understand why you guys can't go outside and schedule protests around the country. Your voices will change things. Your voices are powerful. Stop this Medicare system that is controlled by insurance companies who just care about taking your money. Another great point. Vote for Bernie, you crazy Americans. Good in-depth interview. I don't know if anyone time-stamped it, but there's a time-stamp thing here. From what I've heard, the problem with drug prices in American countries, spending billions on R&D, countries like China then created generic countries with socialized medical systems like Canada, and countries like Europe then purchase from countries like China because they have no respect for patent law. America pays the price, and without American innovations in medicine would decline drastically. We do need R&D, that is for sure. He talks to us like we're actually smart. The other candidates talk down to us. Bernie could be a bit more self-confident without being arrogant. When someone doubts him, just give your record that you have done more often on the right side of history than anybody else. Show off your voting record, man. Against NAFTA, against the Iraq War, shut the haters down and question them more and go after them. Those snowflakes will crumble. Been tolerant to these monsters for too long. Who controls the narrative? Controls the people. Who is controlling the narrative? The corporate media. Who's controlling the corporate media? Big corporations and special interests. Guess what? They control our politicians too, except for the few who refuse to take their money. For us to get out of this nightmare, we the people must control the narrative and be smart enough to see when the corporate media and politicians are trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Fight the oligarchy through the channels by which they control us. For every major mistake America's made in the last 30 years, there is a video of Bernie Sanders trying to stop it. Can someone stat check every claim Bernie made? I live in a swing state and am now a Bernie supporter. Thank you for this video. I really just like Bernie because I thought he wanted different things than he actually wants. This really opened my mind. From what I've watched thus far, it's a good interview, but this comment section has to be heavily moderated. No way everyone on the internet are being so open-minded and positive. Wait, I don't get it. If Americans don't have free healthcare, free college, where does their tax money go? LMAO. Bernie seems more sane and thoughtful than the media puts him up to be. Hope people give him a chance before writing him off. Folks, be realistic. Clinton and others would be so exposed after 5 minutes that they could not stand a podcast which lasts an hour. Bernie has educated opinions. The rest take positions that make their corporate overlords happy. As a Vermonter and somebody that's had a personal conversation with Bernie, I'm so glad he has given this platform to have a quality conversation. Wow, comedian, UFC commentator does better than anyone in mainstream media today, all the time studying journalism, and a stoner does it better, laughing out loud. I hope these so-called analysts from Fox, CNN, and MSNBC see this so they can learn how an interview is supposed to be conducted. Massive surge for Bernie in the latest Reuters polls today. Biden dropping fast. Honestly, I believe there should be a business tax reduction that graduates only slightly as the business grows. As well, student loans need to only go to STEM funds, eliminating BS diplomas in fields that never need a degree. As well, focused on trade fields and reduce the demand for the college. By the way, Japan spends half what we do in schools, and they lead the world in all fields of education. Have 100% literacy. It's not money, and more money is not going to help. Thank you, Joe. You are the future of journalism. As a conservative, I needed this. I actually need to hear the man speak. I'm tired of being fed an opinion by people who care less how I live. Good point. Good, except for rants about mental health. So American people, show us what America's really about and lead the world towards a better future for all. This man is clearly what the world needs, and not only America. Thank you for setting this up, Joe. Bernie's very reasonable, and I've never known this through Fox or CNN. Medicare created for 19 million of the sickest elderly that the insurance companies wouldn't cover, so don't believe the lie that we can't cover the rest of the population. Medicare Advantage costs us, the taxpayers, more money. Stealing from Medicare and try to destroy it like the private schools have done to public schools. Good point. Thanks to the Koch-funded study, it shows Medicare for all would save U.S. money. Another good point. Man, did this interview totally change my opinion of him for the better. Thanks for making this possible, Joe. I just wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation for those of you who were predisposed as anti-Bernie but still open-minded enough to watch this interview. Even if we may disagree on politics a lot, I still have respect for people who are open to new information that may challenge their current worldview. Our country would be a much better place if more people were able and willing to do that. Don't let the DNC choose their candidate again. We must make them choose our candidate. Feel the burn, baby. Those who profit of this current healthcare system will never let that income go. Rogan does such a great job with his interviews, and Sanders seems like a very good guy. Okay, so I'm down with like 80% of what he said. 95%, if I'm interpreting wrong. Everyone who is strictly on the right stresses bad points without sharing the good, and that's fair, but I think we should evaluate everyone equally. Who saw this one and said, holy, you know what, like I did. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Mahatma Gandhi. Great quote. Biggest problem in the world, greed. It triggers corruption, climate change, and everything else. Apparently human nature, although I do believe human beings are intrinsically good. Talking about nature, Mother Nature is getting hotter to fight an infection. We are the infection, so our days are numbered. In the meantime, let's go off in style with a bully like Bernie at the helm. Change is inevitable and will happen. The super rich are not going to let go of their power and wealth easily or willingly. The only change they want to see more power and wealth coming their way. We've got to take the power back from them, of course. At the same time, I thought Bernie was just a radical individual. This interview has been a real eye-opener. An hour podcast, almost 10 million views. Seems like a viable option to get your platform out there to a large audience and speak in detail on issues that are important to you. Create your own soundbites, maybe. Bernie and Tulsi are the best candidates. If Trump came on the show, he'd dig his own grave in the first 10 minutes. Dear Americans, please vote for this guy. Sincerely, the rest of the world. That's a lot of views. It's nice to see Bernie get so passionate on such important issues. Once he coughed up that frog, like 20 minutes in, he was on fire. Bernie's the only Democratic threat to Trump. These are legal gun owners need to realize that it's nothing against them. It's to stop people who would kill them given the chance. Then when will they wake up and understand that if you do not begin to make a change, then change won't happen? That's true. It's a shame to see how many people are brainwashed to believe Bernie's policies on taxing the wealthy would ruin the lives of people in the lower middle class. It simply wouldn't happen. The ultra wealthy are spending fortunes to make sure these taxes don't come because it's cheaper for them than the taxes. They're paying politicians fortunes so they don't have to make your country better or provide for your civilians. They're paying huge amounts of money to rich, powerful people so they don't have to share more. True. That was amazing. Healthcare is a human right. Best show ever. I love you, Bernie. Great interview. Bernie 2020. This is a no-brainer, people. I hated Bernie Sanders because of what the media told me he stood for. Now I understand he's just a guy trying to do what he believes is right, just like any of us. Please get out and vote. The way, the truth, the hope, and the light for a genuinely great new America. If you American people have any brains, you would vote for him. Everything he says is achievable. Ever since as a child, the media kept talking about how great America is and how all the movie, video games are all made there. Then all of a sudden I grew up and started to see the real America. I don't want to travel living in America anymore. Wow, basically everything he said is exactly how I feel. It doesn't sound like he was on some ego, greed, fame trip, and I think he actually would stand up for us. I hope I get to vote for him. I get the feeling true conservatives are not disliking this video. It's mostly libertarians. Something confuses me much about American politics, especially the advertisement the pharmaceutical companies place against certain ideas the candidates have. I have no single idea of how some Americans wouldn't want to vote for Bernie or those who want Medicare for all. It makes absolutely no sense. Trump has definitely not reduced prices for medicine because lobbyists and insurance companies still exist. You guys have the power to vote for candidates that would end such chaos and end that simply stupid system. Companies care about the profit, they don't care about your well-being. I hope Americans become wiser in who they vote for because these decisions affect the future of Americans and your children. Australia has Medicare. I've never paid to see a doctor in my life. I'm 31. Please share this with your friends, even if you disagree with these points, please. The last question. Okay. Now with the most comprehensive criminal justice reform and climate change proposals of any candidate, period. From the UK here, and I don't think I've ever heard a politician speak so much sense. Thanks, Joe. I know who I'm voting for. Bernie 2020. Awesome job, Joe. This might be the most impactful podcast you have done. Really love the political insight I received. Love from Portugal. I'm French, but can I vote for this guy? Damn, it's going to be Bernie 2020. Could Trump go into any of the details that Bernie goes into? Not a chance. Bernie is trying to put the USA back in USA. Bernie 2020. Share this to all my social media groups with American members. This man needs to be heard. Bernie Sanders is the only Democrat I would vote for if I were to vote Democrat. Thank you to Joe Rogan for keeping an open mind and having Bernie on. Thanks to Joe fans for hearing him out. And thank you to everyone for keeping an open mind. Share this video to people you know, please. This is the most hopeful and inspiring thing I've seen on YouTube since forever. Go Bernie. Thank you, Joe. Bernie's answers are so structured and easy to understand when he's given time to speak. I absolutely respect Bernie Sanders for his integrity. Thank you for giving Bernie a platform. I'm a conservative, but man, Bernie, he has certainly risen in my estimation. I only agree with 35% of what he wants, but way more than the other 25. He has my vote. Simple. Well, I wouldn't say simple. To stop this corruption of wealthy, I would have to tax the rich, but put the ones who are doing illegal stuff when it comes to business, crack down on this lobbyist system, put the ones who should be in jail. If a judge or lawyer supports corruption, they go to jail. If they put fear in them, they will follow the laws. The only reason this will not happen because you will sound like a dictator probably, or plus politicians can't say no to money because they themselves are involved. Laughing out loud. So glad this is trending. Spread the word. What a brilliant move on Bernie's end by showing up here. Wow. At Joe Rogan, thank you so much for doing this podcast. You should do this for all the candidates. Love Bernie too. Do you realize that they talked in 1 hour only very few times about Trump? That's sadly something really rare these days. Get Elizabeth Warren on this. This was very informative. Joe. Bernie had my vote in the 2016 primary, and he'll have it in 2020. Speaking as a nurse working in a private mental hospital, I can tell you the disparity in the quality of health insurance is a huge issue, leading to my employees making very shady moves to make the most money. We'll have people with insurance from Kaiser who are being forced to stay 2+ weeks in order for the company to siphon insurance money out of them. Meanwhile, we have people who have Medicare or are simply uninsured being forced out of the hospital with minimum medication as soon as possible. As someone who went into the medical field to help people, I feel like I've been a slave to corporate America and been forced to act counterintuitively. We need a change. Bernie is so right. It's all connected. Economic injustice, obscene and regulated corporate greed leads to a society that decays. Infrastructure suffers. People suffer economic security and despair. Undereducation, poor physical and mental health. Drug abuse, insane fear, paranoia, and a cruel dog-eat-dog society. We all suffer, well, not the filthy psychopathic rich. They do okay isolated in the gated communities. Not a Bernie supporter, but some of what he said is pretty smart, especially free airtime for politicians. That was brilliant. The bankruptcy law that Bernie was speaking on with student loan debt was passed by Biden, who also wrote the bill. Just so everyone understands that Biden isn't on the average person's side. He's on the side of the banks who are making good cash on those students. Would gladly build houses under Bernie administration. Finally, an interview where nobody is interrupted in a sentence. You know, when you go through life and just forget about your empathy, you forget how much sometimes you want more for others than you want for yourself. Forget how much you love your fellow humans. This helped me remember. Bernie or bust. Imagine having a conversation about politics without putting everybody else down around you. I'm really impressed by your interview style here. Clear, direct, and thoughtful. Frankly, I'm used to turned off by your emphasis on debunking PC culture, so-called cultural warriors, and gender expression, many of whom are easy targets, even if they are also ridiculous. I like shooting fish in a barrel. However, this interview is as illuminating as anything in mainstream media, even Terry Gross. People who are thinking they'll vote for Sanders in the election now, please, for the sake of democracy, vote during the primaries as well. Bernie Sanders is a good person. I'm not American, but my vote is for Bernie. He is saying all the right words, and I hope he does at least a few percent of what he's saying. But all drugs need to be legal because it's impossible to win the drug war. Love Bernie. He is basically saying, let's make America great again. It was nice to see this. I wasn't a Bernie supporter, and I'm still not, but it's refreshing to see the explanation of his perspective. Joe should be the moderator for the presidential debates. Joe, please have this gentleman on again. This is coming from a Canadian. If he doesn't win the primaries, there should be protests against DNC. It was stupid enough that Hillary won the primaries last time. This is the man that people want. I just want to thank everyone who isn't already a Bernie supporter for taking the time to at least hear him out. No matter what you decide, there is power in keeping an open mind and thinking for yourself. True. I'm lucky I was born in the Netherlands. I would live in the USA. If I would live in the USA, my vote for Bernie would be a no-brainer. Get real, America. Can someone tell me how many people are killed by handguns? Everyone in the USA should listen to this. One problem with modern American healthcare is the fallacy of family diseases based on how society treats entire families. Make up illnesses to justify removing hormone or emotion regarding organs like the thyroid. If we made prescription drugs easier to get rid of, you'll have another generation of kids and adults relying on FDA-approved medication for bipolar disorder and ADHD and OCD for controlling. So instead of addressing leaky gut and those neurotransmitters and digestion, we got to limit gun manufacturers and make pharmaceuticals more available by implementing a national healthcare system. Seems like a backward equation. Why do we always choose wrong? I love to see this long form in all candidates. This is fantastic in so many ways, and because it's not stuck in one small window of television time, I was able to watch it at my own time. Seriously, get them all on podcasts. Great show. It flew right by. He's an extremely effective communicator. Damn, every candidate should get on here, because watching them on here on TV is way different, and I feel that people don't know the difference. They can get confused and possibly lean towards what the fake media wants them to know. Although this has changed my mind a lot, he still allowed HRC to cheat him out of an election. He allowed BLM to chase him off a stage. Need to be able to stand up to other countries, etc. I'm 23 and I'm voting Bernie in 2020 and can't change my mind. Please fix housing. I live in Arkansas. And it's really bad. Please, all of you people, this 2020 U.S. election is a pivotal point in human history. Do not hesitate to vote for Bernie. Otherwise, we're going to face needlessly darker times globally than the ones we already are. I have to disagree with Bernie on the cost of heart surgery in Canada. I had major heart surgery and it cost me $24. This covered the cost of renting a TV for my stay. So there. $24 for major heart surgery. Wow. Great interview. Kudos to Bernie for doing this. Hope more candidates start doing this. Some items I'm scratching my head on. Mass shootings, discuss how making assault weapons illegal will help the problem. Bernie says corporations would produce safe and effective marijuana, but discusses how they are corrupt and greedy. Well, that depends on what you're talking about. I'm seeing a lot of wow, the mainstream media made Bernie out to be crazy, but they were wrong type of comments. Now you see, I've never been about political parties. It's been the interests of ordinary people versus the interests of the establishment and those who uphold it. Wow, Rogan really coming up in the world. Toss aside my preconceived notions about Bernie and thoroughly enjoy this exchange. Not a Bernie fan, but I'm glad he's talking about these things and Joe's willing to host the conversation. Bernie turned independent, run on this platform. Maybe we can put trade programs back into public schools. How refreshing it would be to have a president who can talk in coherent sentences again. Yo Media Society has brainwashed me to believe Bernie was just a radical old nuthead. This hour and 7 minutes completely changed my mind. I cannot believe how much I resonated with what he was saying. If I did vote Dem, I'd vote Sanders. How much you want to bet that 40k dislikes were by people who didn't even watch the video, watched it for 5 minutes?